Well, thank you everybody for taking the time out of your evening to join us. We really appreciate it. I'll just go through a quick introduction for myself and the other people from the town staff that are here. My name is Allison Murray. I'm a principal planner in the planning department. I've been working with the consultant and staff from the town on the comprehensive plan. We also have Peter Hans, who is the director of the planning department, David Barnes, who's the director of environmental protection for the town, or director of the Department of Environment and Waterways. And we have Matt Collado, who is a planner in the planning department. We also have Councilwoman Lisa Inzerillo, who's here. Can you raise your hand, Councilwoman? And Paul Kinsella, who is with us from H2M, who's our consultant on the project. So I'm going to do a relatively short presentation. It'll probably take about 15 to 20 minutes to get through the presentation. If it works out for everybody, what we'd like to do is go through the presentation first, and if you can save your questions and comments to the end, I think that would be beneficial. If there's something that's really pressing that you have a question and want clarification on as we're going through the presentation, you can use the chat function and post it there. I may not be able to see it once I go into the full screen and share my screen, but other people from the town will be able to see it and can answer that question. So if there's something that that you either think you need clarification about what a term means, and we need to do that before we finish the presentation, you can ask the question there. But if you have questions or comments about the recommendations, we just ask if you can hold that until the end, and then we can go through with everybody. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, does everybody see the first slide of the presentation? Can someone get?
Yep.
All right, great. So welcome again, everybody. This is the third community outreach meeting that we're holding to go over, as Nicole said, both the summary of comments that we had received through the public input process over the past year and a half, or 2 years actually, and then the recommendations that have come out of the plan. So the first thing to let everybody know, although I think most of you have probably participated in this before, what is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is a rational document that has as its underlying purpose the control of land uses for the benefit of the whole community. It's established by New York State town law as a requirement that any entity with zoning have a comprehensive plan. The last comprehensive plan that the town adopted was completed between 1957 and 1961. So we're looking at a document that's over 60 years old and really needed to be re-examined and redrafted, because the town 60 years ago is different from the town now. What our plan, with the draft comprehensive plan, the 2020 plan, includes is a section on land use, on circulation or transportation, community facilities, a section on sustainability, a capital improvement plan, and then we've gone through and summarized each of the recommendations for the 6 different communities into 6 community plans. That way somebody from Smithtown could take a look directly at the Smithtown plan. Somebody in Nesconset could look through the Nesconset plan and have, instead of having to go through the entire document. This is a map just to show the census boundary for Nesconset, which is what the town used as the community boundary. It's somewhat different from zip codes and from fire districts and school district boundaries. So each of the communities may be slightly different from what you would identify yourself, especially along the boundaries. Some people that may live over here would consider themselves to be Hauppauge, and over here Smithtown. And in this area of Nesconset, you might consider yourself to be Lake Ronkonkoma. However, this is the boundary that we use in identifying the community. For general information, we had this available at the community workshops back in 2019, but just to let people know, if you weren't able to attend, the total population of Nesconset is approximately 18,000 residents. It is the highest density hamlet in the township, so more residents per acre than areas throughout the rest of the town. Similar to other parts of the town, it's primarily single-family residential. About 88% of the population owns their home opposed to renting. Again, similar to the rest of Smithtown and the other communities in Smithtown. You have a wealthier population. A third earn more than the median income, which is roughly 150,000 for a family. Education is a very well educated hamlet. And this information down here just provides some information about how people get around. The majority obviously drive. A smaller percentage take public transportation. That's mostly to work, although I don't think many people are taking public transportation to work now. But these were numbers from 2 or 3 years ago. You can see from the chart on the right, about 60% of the acreage of Nesconset is single family residential. There's a decent amount of this, 5% is commercial, which is pretty typical with the rest of the township. And about 5% is open space. And then the other land uses are smaller. This chart here, this map shows the points of all the people who had participated in the online questionnaire. So as we had started saying earlier, townwide, what we'd started in 2019 was we posted an online questionnaire for people to answer and to let us know what opinions they had about the town, what they wanted to see for the town in the future. And any issues that people saw as existing or potential for the future. So we got about 1,200 responses to the questionnaire. That's individual participants. So you see the vast majority. There were a few that were I think past residents that lived elsewhere. Either they lived in New York City or in the country, but the vast majority were people that all lived within Smithtown. So these are all points showing where we got responses from. You'll see a nice cluster in Nesconset. We also held 6 community workshops, and one for each community. There were about 370 people total that attended the public workshops. For Nesconset in particular, we had a community workshop at Great Hollow Middle School back in March of 2019. We had about 100 people that attended the workshop, so it was a really good, public outcome there. And there were also about 100 people that identified themselves as Nesconset residents that had completed the questionnaire.
Allison, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But pertaining to the land use slide, we had a question: how do you define vacant? Would you mind just covering that real quick?
Oh, sure. Vacant meant that there was no land use there, and also that it was not protected open space. So a property that would be considered vacant, you can see if I can pull up a land use slide. I might have one actually in one of the upcoming slides, but the Hornberger property would have been considered vacant because it wasn't used for, there were no existing uses there, and it wasn't protected open space. So that's, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. For the responses that we received at the public workshop, here's just a summary of the comments that we had received. And you can see here, for those of you that attended, we used the paper sheets to write comments down on. We also had comments that were written directly on maps to give ideas of what people wanted in particular locations. But the summary, so these are the comments that we heard echoed throughout the workshop, was the desire to have a community oriented, I'll call it a small downtown, kind of a feel along Smithtown Boulevard, not your traditional downtown, but just more of a community oriented center. And what people wanted with that was to make Smithtown Boulevard more walkable, pedestrian friendly, to revitalize the Nesconset Plaza that's there, which, the comments that were made were just the extra amount of parking and that it's underutilized. To keep a sense of place in Nesconset along Smithtown Boulevard, and to see cultural arts and amenities included. We also heard many comments about the former Hornberger property, part of which is now the preserves. This is the property east of the Cleary School. The comments that we had received were, one, that the apartments in the southern half were too dense, the retirement community, that is, and that the northern half should be preserved. I think people truly had, would wish that the entire area be preserved. But as one had already had approval, the focus was put on preserving the northern half. Then other comments that were echoed were appropriate development should consider location, size, and scale. There was comments about, for transportation and traffic, that there's too much speeding and shortcuts through the residential areas. People wanted to see more parkland acquired, and also water quality and parkland improvements along Lake Ronkonkoma, or around Lake Ronkonkoma. Going into the online questionnaire, I have this, it's split up between the townwide survey responses and then responses that were just specific to Nesconset. Townwide, the top 5 reasons why people choose to live in the town of Smithtown, I said, was the quality of schools, the quality of life, found a home that they liked, and then proximity to family and friends, and the character of the community. So these are all things on both sides of the slide. These are all things that the town really wants to take into consideration in preserving and keep, the people that live here. Why do we live here? Why is it important? What makes it a nice area? The issues of concern should be no surprise to anybody that's here. Property taxes was number 1. Following that was condition of the parks and recreational facilities, access to parks and recreational facilities, environmental quality, traffic, and then bicycle and pedestrian safety. So again, these are things that the town has looked at closely to try and make sure that that we can address appropriately. The summary of comments that we received pertaining to land use was, overwhelmingly people wanted to keep the single family residential neighborhoods as single family residential neighborhoods. Again, it was one of the most important reasons why people live in Smithtown, and it's seen as something that's really important to maintain. Second, to encourage restaurants and retail, as well as people liked the idea of agriculture, commercial recreation, offices, and institutional uses. There was a general sentiment to discourage industrial uses within the town, and strong encouragement to improve biking and walking conditions. On the right side of the slide, you'll see the comments pertaining to sustainability, where people wanted to see a greener town, planting of more trees, incentives to businesses for going green, creating potentially a sustainability advisory board, and so forth. So just some background information for everybody. Going on with the townwide survey responses for parks and open space, what people wanted with recreation and parks was to see more walking and hiking trails throughout the town, as well as in Nesconset, which we'll get to in a minute, but throughout the town, to see natural areas and nature parks, so acquiring more open space, paved bike trails, neighborhood playgrounds, and canoe kayak launches in the locations where appropriate. For Nesconset survey responses, so these were questions that were posed only to people that had identified as being from the Nesconset hamlet. You'll see here, so this was a percentage of what do you do in Nesconset. So 93%, almost everybody eats in Nesconset restaurants, shop in retail stores. And you'll see that the numbers go lower as we go to the right. What respondents wanted more of was, we heard supermarket, restaurants and bars, entertainment establishments, microbreweries, high-end retail stores, and cultural facilities. Now, mind you, there may be other things that people wish as well. These were some, these were the top options that were selected from the questionnaire. To answer the question, how appealing would you find the following types of potential new development along Smithtown Boulevard in Nesconset? We saw the strongest support was for one-story standalone buildings, sort of similar to what is there currently. There was not so much support for building closer to the sidewalk, so what we would typically see in a downtown. So even though there were comments made in the public workshop that people wanted more of a downtown feel, it's clear that the downtown feels bringing more civic uses to the town, not creating a street front typical downtown. There was very strong opposition for buildings that were any higher than 2 stories. Beyond that, we saw comments, people wanted to improve pedestrian access along Smithtown Boulevard, and liked the idea of having some kind of a community park or plaza in the core area where the library and the armory are, but going across the street also into Nesconset Plaza. So what our consultant and town staff had tried to do was take from those comments that were received in both the workshops and the online questionnaire to generate recommendations for the town as a whole, but also for each of the communities. So I'm going to start going through what the townwide recommendations are, and then we're going to get into the specifics for Nesconset. So townwide, generally to modernize and simplify the zoning ordinance is the top recommendation. To right zone properties, meaning if a property, since 1961, the town has made lots of case-by-case rezonings for individual development petitions, and they don't all jive. I guess you'll say we have spatterings of different zones throughout the town. So the idea here is to really right zone the property to the proper zone, to reduce split zoning, to maintain existing neighborhoods, to reduce incompatible uses by, for example, prohibiting future and 1 and 2 family dwellings in the commercial zoning districts, to keep assisted living out of the residence districts. Then for the downtowns, the idea is to the recommendations generally approach revitalization and transit-oriented development within the downtowns only. Creating 2 new zones in the town, one called the Commercial Corridor and one called the Nesconset Core Zone. Then to expand permitted uses in the Innovation Park at Hauppauge, to try and bring in some more, commercial public recreation, some ideas to have some more life in the industrial park, and to revitalize the industrial park. Then to differentiate zoning between West Jericho Turnpike and Middle Country Road. So currently we have the same zoning on both West Jericho Turnpike and Middle Country Road, even though most people would view them as sort of different areas of development. So the recommendation is to split that up. Going into the townwide transportation recommendations, the recommendations are to enhance pedestrian accessibility, really townwide, but particularly near transit areas, the downtowns and the Innovation Park and Hauppauge, to implement traffic calming, which would reduce speeding on our local roads, to fill gaps in the bicycle and pedestrian network, to work with New York State DOT and Suffolk County DPW to deploy timed signal progression on their roads. So a lot of the main roads in the town are owned and maintained by DOT and DPW, but the town can work to improve those roads with those agencies. Other recommendations to consider a complete street strategy in commercial and mixed use development areas, which would allow not just cars, but includes pedestrians and bikes and so forth, to make it safer for everybody in those areas. And then to continue to work with DOT, DPW, and the MTA to reduce congestion on the roads and to improve rail service townwide. Recommendations townwide that pertain to community facilities were to generally upgrade existing facilities, to acquire additional open space. There was support amongst the community for a recreation and community center, and also to protect historic resources. So getting into the recommendations that pertain directly to Nesconset. There are three primary recommendations. The first has to do with creating a new zoning district called the Nesconset Core. This would rezone from Nesconset Plaza, which is over here. I don't know if people can see my cursor, but from Nesconset Plaza, which is across from the Armory, to Nichols Road. And the idea is to more consolidate and make that area more of the downtownish feel. Though, like I said, not super downtown, not bringing the buildings closer to the front, but just a little bit more of a pedestrian oriented feel. The zoning for commercial properties beyond this core area would remain neighborhood business. And then the proposal is to reclaim some of the property at the outskirts of the corridor for single family residential uses. So you can see the yellow areas that are noted along the corridor up on Lake Avenue and Terry Road are, these were all areas that were zoned neighborhood business or professional business. They were zoned commercial. However, they are really quite close to the residential neighborhoods, and it's more appropriate they be zoned for single family residential. This table here is a representation of the 3 different zoning districts that currently are along Smithtown Boulevard. And the Nesconset Core zoning will consolidate those 3 zoning categories into one. The setbacks remain the same as the current zoning districts. They do not come any closer to the street or any closer to residence districts at all. However, Nesconset Core will allow the incorporation of some limited downtown type uses, and as well as the neighborhood business uses that currently exist. It's to encourage moderate intensity commercial and upper floor residential development in the areas where a second floor is feasible. And it also really better reflects what the existing uses along the corridor are. The second change that we wanted to address was along Route 347, the Smithtown bypass, is to create a new zone called the Commercial Corridor Zone, which would go from Terry Road to Southern Boulevard. It's really a hybrid between the WSI, which is Wholesale and Service Industry Zoning District, and the Neighborhood Business Zoning District. So the current zoning in this area right now is neighborhood business in this location and wholesale and service industry as you go along the corridor. The benefit of creating a commercial corridor zone is that it combines the two. It permits contractor showrooms, filling stations, hotel, which is currently permitted by town board special exception, personal services, retail services, and restaurants, but it does not permit single family residential. It does not permit retail shops or repair garages, outdoor storage, commercial public recreation, and so forth. And these are some things that were permitted in the neighborhood business zone. So to make it, the idea is to really consolidate the commercial in this location and maintain the remainder of the bypass as residential. also called for in this area is to facilitate the 347 improvement project that that New York State DOT is undertaking. This table here shows what the commercial corridor zoning and setback regulations would be. So again, the intent is to maintain the bypass, to contain the commercial development within that area that was identified, to permit low traffic generating uses. The zoning district would have the same height regulations and limitations that currently exist in the wholesale and service industry and light industrial and neighborhood business zones. It would also encourage smaller buildings than what the wholesale and service industry zoning district currently permits. So the WSI zoning district currently allows buildings to go up to 50% of the lot area, whereas the recommendation for the commercial corridor is 43%. So small decrease in that. The last area that that we see for potential change in Nesconset, although I think some people, this is the very northern end of Nesconset, goes into St. James. Technically, we look at the southern side of Middle Country Road as Nesconset and the northern side as St. James. But the difference here is to differentiate the zoning between Jericho Turnpike and Middle Country Road. So again, I had mentioned it earlier, but currently we have the same zoning for West Jericho Turnpike as we do for Middle Country Road, and they're really different. They're really different kinds of areas. So it would have minor changes in what's permitted currently. This would largely remain the same. The small changes are that it would allow for food retail, but would not allow for restaurants, which we're trying to have in the downtown areas, trying to push, have more restaurants in the downtown areas. However, any existing uses that are there currently would be grandfathered in, so nothing would be pushed out. Additional recommendations for Nesconset having to do with, a lot of this has to do with recreation, but for Toner Park or Armory Park, improvements would be recommended, including additional hike or bike trails in the undeveloped portion of the park. We had heard a lot of that at the workshop. Field lighting, expanded dog park, extended hours for the park, to acquire and improve parkland along Lake Ronkonkoma. Currently, the town does not have a park for town residents. We have the county park is there, but nothing specific for town residents. Going further, Gibbs Pond Park, nature trail and bathroom improvements, to preserve the old schoolhouse at Nesconset Elementary, to conduct a gaps analysis of sidewalk and bicycle infrastructure that's throughout the entire township, but also in Nesconset particularly, and to encourage local farmers market in the town. This slide, I think I have two more slides, so if people can bear with me and then we can get to comments. This slide just represents where we are in the process. So we started, as we had said, 2 years ago with information gathering and the public workshops and the questionnaire. Then for last year, much of 2020, the consultant and town were working on drafting the recommendations for the plan. And what we've come to at this point is in the middle of December, the consultant did a presentation to the town board and at a public meeting, so all could see. It was recorded and it's available on the town website for those who haven't seen it. I believe that it is also on the GTV site, although I'll have Nicole confirm that in a minute. So what we're doing right now is going to each of the communities to present the draft plan and what the recommendations of the plan are, and to open for public review and comment. The public review and comment period began in the middle of December, however, is going to continue. The earliest that it would close for the draft plan is when the town board holds its public hearing. So we're in the middle of the public comment period. People are welcome to submit their comments at this point, and that will continue again until at least when a public hearing is scheduled, when the public hearing is closed, and that is anticipated to be late February. In addition to comments that we're accepting for the draft plan, we are also going through the town's or the state environmental quality review process for reviewing the recommendations of the draft plan. And we have begun the secret scoping process. This is open currently, so I'm going to let David jump in here so he can explain what the secret process is going to be, and the comment period that apply to that, and how you can participate in that process. And then we can continue on with the next slides. David, do you want to take over for secret?
Thank you, Allison. Yeah, so I wanted to talk to everyone tonight about the secret process. And on December 15th, when the town board had the presentation of the draft plan, they also did two formal things on that day. They adopted a positive declaration requiring a generic environmental impact statement. So part of the process is the environmental impact statement, and we'll analyze any of the potential impacts of all the changes throughout town and in each of the hamlets in that process. The other thing that they did is they adopted a draft scope. The draft scope is an outline of all the topics to study in the environmental impact statement. It's the first formal step in the document, and we are accepting comments on that until this Friday, January 22nd at 5 p.m. So that document is on the town website under the comprehensive plan, right on the front page of the town website. If you go down to there's a link to every comprehensive plan document. And that's about a 15-page document. It's just an outline of the subjects to study and analyze in the environmental impact statement. So we'll get comments on that. We're getting some feedback from all these community outreach meetings. And once we have the final scope, we'll start to really dig in and analyze each one of these potential impacts and create the document. The town board would accept the draft document, and then we'd have a comment period on that, a formal comment period. That'll be at least a month long. We'll get all of those comments back. Those comments, the next step is to prepare the final environmental impact statement. So to address all the comments in any ways the plan needs to change based on environmental impacts and the comments that come out of that. The step after that is the finding statement. Those are kind of the determinations, the findings of all the analysis and adopting the plan. But that's a ways down the road. So we have a few different points along here where we can get comments from everyone and comments on the plan and the potential environmental impacts and incorporate those into the documents in the final plan that comes out of this. So and I'll be here for questions at the end.
Thanks, David. So the last slide that I have here is really a comment slide. It's for comments pertaining to the draft comprehensive plan as well as to SECRA. These are the ways where how people can participate in the process. The first is attend a virtual meeting, which all of you are doing, or listen to the virtual meeting once it's posted on the website. As Nicole said, the previous two meetings have already been posted. This one will be posted shortly, and then we have 3 more following this. Second is you can submit written comments to the Smithtown Planning Department by email. Our email address, is smithtownplanning@smithtownny.gov. You could also send it to just planning@smithtownny.gov. Both of those email addresses will get to us. We are also, for everyone's knowledge, you know that we're recording this. Our consultant is also on the call. We are taking notes. The consultant is taking notes. So your comments are being noted here, and they're being noted whether you speak them or just put them in the chat. So for people to know that you have, this is a mechanism for speaking out as well. Another process is to attend the town board public hearing for the draft. As we said, the date has yet to be determined. We anticipate that it may be towards the end of February. However, that public hearing will be advertised. It will be advertised in the local newspaper, which is Smithtown News. We will also be doing a press release about that to the other news agencies, so Newsday and so forth. And you can always check the town website if you don't have any of those resources, but the town website will be updated with it as well. And then lastly is to attend the town board public hearing for the final comprehensive plan. So it's anticipated that we can address the comments that we receive from all of the communities and all the residents, and be able to incorporate that into a final comprehensive plan. And the town board will have a public hearing once that has been presented as well. So your comments can always be accepted at that. So that would be the last stage for the draft comprehensive plan. And then for SECRA, as David had said, we have a draft scoping document that is open for public review and comment until this Friday, January 22nd at 5 p.m. And then there will also be review and comment opportunities for the draft generic environmental impact statement, which we anticipate at some point in the spring of 2021. And so each of those documents will have the information on specifically where comments can be received. They can be sent directly to the town board, to Smithtown Planning, but they can also be sent to our environmental department. So I think I am done, and I'm happy to take any questions. Nicole, are there?
Yeah, so
I guess
I'm
maybe
gonna-
we can go through the if there was anything in the chat first, but then if there's anybody that has their hand raised and has a question.
I'm gonna call on our first participant, and I'm just gonna remind everybody before that you can use the raise your hand button, which is under the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's if you hit the little reactions button and click on raise hand, we will call everybody in the order your hand was raised. With that, I am gonna unmute Eric McCarty and allow him to speak. Go ahead, Eric, whenever you're ready. Oh, you might have to unmute yourself. I think I had asked to unmute. We'll give him a
Hi,
second.
guys. Thanks for this opportunity to comment. I guess I'll start with David first because he has to get these comments in prior to Friday, the 22nd. David, can you tell us more about this environmental justice and also about this plans to change the flood zone on the Nisqually River? It seems, I don't think that's good for the interest of the town. Can you comment on that?
So the document that we're getting comments on, Eric, for the end of this week is the outline of the topics to study. So it includes things like traffic, social and economic impacts of the plan, drainage and water analysis, those types of topics on each of the towns. It also analyzes sanitary or sewage flow issues, groundwater impacts. So it has an outline of all the topics for the different hamlets.
I understand that, but I just had a question about that Smithtown wants to change its destination as a community so it could change the environmental statement and the zoning so it could change the plan and expand around the flood zone of the Nisqually River? I mean, this is pretty big stuff, Dave.
Okay, so I think what you're talking about, when you're saying flood zone, I think you're talking about the local waterfront revitalization plan. That's a separate plan that we've been working on for a couple of years. That's the area by the Bull.
Yes.
And it wouldn't be in the flood zone per se, but the area within approximately a half a mile of the Bull there. So from the top of the hill at Brookside Drive, and then extending all the way basically over to Caleb Smith Park if you're on Main Street 25.
Okay.
That area is regulated, also all along the river, but that particular area there is regulated by the LWRP as in the wild and scenic river corridor. So essentially those businesses that are there from the top of the hill at Brookside down and past the Bull up to Caleb Smith, they can't change, they can't upgrade, they're kind of locked in. They can't switch from one use to another easily.
Okay.
So that it's more to address those. It's not to propose more development in the floodplain.
Okay.
Right,
I
and
guess-
actually,
I just have two more quick
Allison
questions.
may be able to add a little more on that. She's been working directly on that
I
plan.
understand it. I just have two quick questions for Allison pertaining to Nesconset directly. And the two questions are, how many apartments are going to be in the Nesconset core zone, are proposed in the core zone, and how many apartments are going to be proposed in the commercial corridor rezoning?
sure. So the commercial corridor rezoning would not allow apartments. The Nesconset core zoning would allow apartments as an accessory use, as the neighborhood business zone currently does. So it doesn't modify that. We do not anticipate that there will be any significant number of apartments. The consultant is in the middle of doing a build out analysis, which is going to be incorporated into the secret process. So that will absolutely be available for people to review. However, with the lack of sewers in Nesconset, we did not anticipate that there was going to be any significant number of apartments, certainly not more than really what would be permitted currently.
Okay, I just have one last comment and I'm done.
Sure.
On the Chestnut Street development, the 55 and over community, I know it was mentioned in the comprehensive plan that as seniors get older, they're going to need places to stay. Is there something in the plan or in that apartment complex that'll give priority to Smithtown residents 55 and over to have first dibs on the apartments?
Pete, I don't know, Pete, do you want to take this? I think there had been, because this was originally approved about 30 years, 25 years ago.
Yeah, it was originally approved in 1998. I think most people are aware that Storybook Meadows was approved around 1998. And for whatever reason, they never built the project out. They finally sold it to a different developer. And the developer changed the project around a little bit. They reduced the number of units from 194 to 180. There is an affordability portion in there. And what I mean by affordability, that's based on medium income. There's the Long Island Workforce Housing Act. It's not based, there's no Section 8 or anything like that. That will be open by lottery. But right now there's no restriction or, it's a 55 and over community. And like every other complex, it's on the free market. So whoever wants to live in there. It's a little bit more involved when you go through the Long Island Workforce Housing Act. We have like a lottery. So if there's 180 apartments, that means there's going to be 18 that are rent regulated. But we don't, right now the project's just under construction, and I honestly, like Allison was saying earlier, I don't anticipate many more apartments for Nesconset. We're not proposing any sewer lines. It's downtown's Kings Park, Smithtown, and St. James, where where everybody's targeting the sewer development. Nesconset, we're not proposing that. So you're basically restricted by whatever the Suffolk County Health Department's going to allow. So most of the development that you have along Smithtown Boulevard is essentially what is going to remain even as this comprehensive plan is proposing.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Sure. And Eric, I just wanted to go one more comment or response to your question about the Nesconset River and the flood zone and the DEC, the river corridor along the river. The plan, both the LWRP and the comprehensive plan, which references the recommendations of the draft LWRP, that's Local Waterfront Revitalization Program. Sorry for the jargon. Recommend expanding the park. So they recommend expanding Gibbon Park there. And okay. And also there's the Breslin property that's currently undeveloped. It's zoned for multifamily now. The recommendation that comes out of that is that any development on that site should be clustered, so that the first recommendation is that if it can be acquired or rights can be transferred from that site to another site, that's most preferable, so that it would not be developed. If that does not come to fruition, the recommendation is that it be developed in a clustered manner, so that the development would be as far to the east side of the property as possible, so that the park could be expanded and the west side of that property could be used for open space. So I think the characterization that changing the DEC River Corridor designation to community, I think that if it's being characterized as encouraging commercial, I think that's inaccurate. It would allow for the existing commercial development to sustain itself, but it would keep the areas closest to the river recreational.
Okay, thank you, Allison.
Sure.
Next, we have Mike Cooley. I'm gonna ask you to, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, thanks for presenting this. Thanks for giving us some time to ask questions. I have a few, but if I have too many, you can cut me off and I'll send them by email. So we were just talking about the preserve at Nesconset, and I guess, also talking about SECRA. One of the things that it seemed like happened there was the project has been talked about, like we said, for 30 years or whatever it is. And it went forward with some old environmental impact statements. Is there consideration being given to that for future projects that will be considered as part of the SECRA review, where we don't allow projects to go forward unless it's got a current analysis within, say, the last year?
Want me to take that one? Okay.
Sure.
So
I mean, I was going to say, number one, I don't know. You go ahead, David.
Okay. So Mike, the comprehensive plan has about a 20-year timeline, 20 to 30-year timeline. So when we're doing the analysis for this environmental impact statement, we're doing calculations and anticipating that this gets built out gradually over the next 20 to 30 years. So, and what the policies are going to impact and how it's going to change, the physical and environment. So there is a long timeline on that. But as far as like when specific developments come in, we'll be looking to see if they're in conformance with the comprehensive plan and the anticipated impacts of the comprehensive plan. And then the developer would have to do SEQA review from that point if they're deviating from the plan and also the site specific this is called a generic environmental impact statement because we're looking at the town-wide kind of big brush impacts. We can't really analyze, the specifics of each individual development and, how much traffic there's going to be at a driveway on a future development. So those things will have to be done. And I think all of us as the professional staff sort of realize, what's happening and can write into the findings and the conclusions how long these things can last and when and if, but it's mostly if circumstances change in the future. If they come in to propose something different, or if that's when it would trigger additional review in the future. And I think we can do that in each individual case.
And David, I think if I can just add, one of the benefits of having a comprehensive plan opposed to not having one is that the environmental review that has to go into the comprehensive plan is generic, and so we're evaluating what we see as and the community sees as the potential impacts that could occur as a result of this plan over the next 20 to 30 years. And additional projects that that come in may have to do supplemental environmental impact reviews. But the benefit of having a plan is that the town is held to implementing the plan and to making projects, approving projects that will comply with the plan and not approving projects that don't comply with the plan and implement the plan. So we kind of have two environmental reviews that move into to develop, potential development. The first is the comprehensive plan environmental review, and then only those projects that would comply with the plan can really move forward. And those projects would have their own environmental review. David, do I characterize that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. The other one's, a little bit more general. You talked in the beginning how, the plan's taken a couple of years to put together and still isn't complete. And in the meantime, a number of projects have either been completed or broken ground. There's a lot of money and time being spent to put this together, and I really appreciate that it's being put together, but it seems like in the interest of really getting it right, that maybe some of these things should have been paused until it was completed. So can anyone speak to, was there any discussion to a building moratorium while this plan was being formed? And why, if there was, why did you decide against it? And if there wasn't, why didn't that conversation take place?
I mean, I could speak to that. No, a moratorium was not put in place, and everything that has been reviewed for the most part has been stuff that's been zoning compliant with existing zoning. If we have something substantial that's being proposed, sure, that's being scrutinized and perhaps should be on hold. We were talking about the project that's under construction on Smithtown Boulevard. Again, that was an older site plan, but anything that's been of significance, the Watermill Inn, was very controversial in Nesconset as well, and that went through the process, and it was determined that there are potential impacts, and so our environmental department proposed a positive declaration, meaning that they have to do a full environmental impact statement. The process has worked. Even though we're going through the process, we knew from the beginning a comprehensive plan was going to be 2.5 to 3 years of a process. Certainly COVID didn't help this year. I mean, we've been chugging along working on it, but obviously now we're meeting with you in a forum like this as opposed to in person, like we had planned to do. Just take that project, it went through the process. I think they're reevaluating whether or not they want to do a hotel. Not many people go in for weddings right now at a catering facility. Maybe they'll scale it down. Maybe they'll abandon it. Maybe they'll pursue it. I don't know, but I really haven't seen any true negative development come in here because there was not a moratorium.
Okay, quick follow-up to that one. So it does seem like the commercial corridor in Nesconset is going to allow for a hotel at the watermill, just on the face of it.
It currently allows for hotel motel, and there's really no change. For the most part, it's currently zoned WSI, which is more typical of the Jericho Turnpike Middle Country Road zoning category. What we're trying to do is make it more like an office corridor or friendlier towards restaurant and service stuff. We're trying to pull the, we don't want more car dealerships and repair garages on the Smithtown bypass. And that's really the differentiation, because right now the current zoning is more similar to that of Middle Country Road. And you see the type of operations up there. They're more in and out, and they're higher traffic generator uses. And obviously we don't want that on Smithtown bypass. And the other things, we're really trying to compress the zoning into the existing commercial area, from Southern Boulevard, where Taco Bell is, to Terry Road, where you have the watermill. We're trying to contain that. If you go out towards Brookhaven, you can see it's just a constant stretch of commercial zoning. We've had a couple of zone change proposals for like a Dunkin' Donuts on some vacant pieces. We oppose that. So that's the kind of thing we're trying to contain commercial where it currently is allowed and not allow it to spread further.
Okay, last one, I promise.
All right.
I'm really mostly concerned with being able to preserve some of the open space that's left in Nesconset. So I was the one who asked the vacant, what does vacant mean? So it sounds like, there's about 7% left. One of the slides mentioned that Nesconset is already one of the most dense and developed areas.
Right.
I think there was mention of maybe adding a town park next to the county park by Lake Ronkonkoma, but it just didn't feel like there was enough in the recommendations part to try to preserve more land to bring the Nesconset hamlet more in line with the other hamlets and having as much open space and preserved land as possible.
Sure, we generally prioritize properties that are environmentally sensitive, such as high groundwater, or properties that are adjacent to existing town or county parks. And one of the thoughts right now is the supervisor has been working with the county executive to possibly do a few land swaps around the town. I know it's in Smithtown, but we're talking about trying to acquire the Oasis Gentlemen's Club. That's on one side of the river, but the other side of the river is Gibbon Park, and it's kind of disrepair and not maintained. The town would really like to acquire that and really make that the focal point of the community. You have the historic bull right across the street, and we feel that we could really do something nice, like a playground and a canoe launch, and really dress up what Gibbon Park looks like. And again, if we could get rid of that facility down there. But like one of the thoughts is, while we're doing these possible land swaps, is there's properties around Blydenburg Park and Hauppauge that are actually town owned, but when you're on it, you think you're really within the Blydenburg County Park. We're also considering the former Bavarian Inn site as a possibility, so that the town of Smithtown could also have a presence on Lake Ronkonkoma. The towns of Brookhaven and Islip, they have their town parks on Lake Ronkonkoma. There's the county park there, but that serves county residents. So there's a consideration, and I know the supervisor's office was working on trying to work something out there. We'd like to also, again, it's county land, the Cummerdinger property. Myself and David, we're Nesconset residents. We know Nesconset well. Our kids went to Great Hollow and Smithtown East, and we know the land, and of course we care about the community. But there's a lot of opportunities. There's underutilized land at Gibbs Pond Park, the Cummerdinger site. I mean, that's amazing property. You know, people are talking all the time about, is there something we can do to open it up, more hiking trails, possibility of fishing. When you're in there, you know, it's kind of swampy and areas are unmaintained, but you know, you could really have a jewel if you could work that into the old Bavarian Insight and tie that into the county park there as well. There's also the drainage areas. You know, years ago, you know, Lake Ronkonkoma, the water level rises and drops. Some years you can walk around the lake, other years it's almost overflowing. You've got that area by Charles Court. You know, those are types of properties that we try to encourage acquisition of. When the water level was high, I mean, those people were having their basements constantly flooded out. So, you know, those are our priorities. The Hunts Pond area as well. That area is known to have basements that are constantly flooding. Does that help answer a little bit?
It does. And I know a couple of them were in Smithtown. So as much as we can do in Nesconset, I know a lot of people are still concerned with what's left of the Hornberger property. I mean, it's a big ask, but, and I know that if you're familiar with the Avalon Park in Stony Brook, I know that, I believe that's
sure.
private, but boy, would that be nice there, you know, something like that.
Yep.
So appreciate you guys taking the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can just ask, Mike, if there are other particular properties that you recommend as having called out, please, you can either put them in the chat or you can send an email, and we'll certainly bring that to the attention. So because the plan does recommend acquiring additional open space, but if there's particular locations that weren't called out that you feel should be, those comments are we'd accept them kindly. So thanks.
Thank you very much.
Nicole, do
Okay,
we have
so
another
next,
person?
sorry, go ahead.
I was just asking if we had another person.
Yes, we do. We have Paul Musso.
Hey guys, how are you? Thank you for having everyone here. I'll be real quick, promise. So just two questions. One is, in terms of the sewers, obviously the county is handling that, but is it possible when each of the individual hamlets are being discussed, is it possible that you could touch on what's happening in terms of sewers, or where everything is at in terms of sewers being done in the individual hamlets? That was the first question, if that's something that could be touched on. And then the second question is, in terms of rentals and more specific on the rentals for the seniors and even trying to keep the kids local in the town, is there anything that the town could do that gives the residents of Smithtown, I'll call it first dibs, or anything you could tie the developers to that allows the residents of Smithtown to have, I'll call it first dibs, in terms of getting an opportunity, whether it's rental or any type of component like that?
Sure. I think,
I'll take that one.
okay, I was gonna say, I said I could take it too. Go ahead, David.
Okay. All right. So we'll go for the easy one first, I guess, or right. So I have two kids who are in their 20s, so I completely understand your question. I'm struggling to keep them on Long Island. I got one that came back to Long Island after a few years away, and the other one is out west right now. I would love to, next generational housing, for the young people is definitely near and dear to me.
Much needed.
But unfortunately, the Fair Housing Act, the Federal Fair Housing Act, which also, this goes back to the 55 and over community. The Fair Housing Act doesn't let us restrict it to town residents or make it so it's town residents only first or first priority. So, there's a lot of court cases that say that is discriminatory, and you can't do that. So as much as we would love to do it, and if there's ways to encourage it, and if developers can advertise locally and things like that, it works. But as far as like mandating it through zoning codes and laws, it's not really permitted.
Paul, one of the realities, though, that we find is that most of the developments, whether it's Kensington Gardens in St. James or the condo project, the Beechwood at 347 and 111, everybody tells us the majority of them actually end up being fairly local. Most of the residents that move into these units are from the community. They're empty nesters. They no longer want to maintain their property. They see the projects being built, so they kind of do get the first dibs because they see it happening. And again, they know the community and they want to stay within the area. So most of the developers have been telling me that, yeah, even though we don't market it that way or restrict it, in actuality, that's what does happen.
Awesome.
Okay, and then for sewers, there's really 4 areas in the town of Smithtown that have active sewer projects. So I guess it was in 2017, the governor allocated $20 million, $10 million for Kings Park and $10 million for
40.
Smithtown.
40.
Yeah, 20 and 20.
I'm sorry, 20 and 20. Yes, 20, 40. So the Kings Park project is well underway. It's technically a county project, but we've been supporting it and working on that. That's well underway. It's all been engineered and designed. It has all of its necessary approvals. The town gave a small piece of land in front of the Parks Department for a pump station that had to be alienated. So a lot of steps have been done. So that one is really moving along, is likely to get in the ground soon. I think the county has one more public hearing.
February 2nd.
That's actually scheduled for February 2nd.
Yeah.
And after that, they'll probably be ready to start going out to bid for the construction of that one.
The anticipated completion for that project is 2024. And the big thing is they already have a sewer treatment plant. That's the main difference from everywhere else. They've got the former sewer treatment plant from the psychiatric center. So that's why that's so much further along. And then St. James, not to cut in, Dave, but the dry pipe is already in the ground since the road was redone. They're trying to find the plant location, which possibly could be Gyrodyne. We'll see. And then Hauppauge Industrial Park, the plant has been completed and upgraded, but that's to serve the Hauppauge Industrial Park. And then the other priority is downtown Smithtown. So with those 4 projects, right now, the emphasis really hasn't been on sewering Nesconset. It's to get these downtowns sewered.
Of course.
Paul,
Right.
it's Nicole. If you want, I'm happy to talk to Pete Scully about maybe doing a regular update with the community, like a Zoom call to update people on where we are. I know Smithtown has been a whole process. He did start an actual community group that I believe it was it Tim Walls who was?
Yeah, Tim Small.
Tim Small, sorry. Tim Small had actually kind of broached the idea because the Smithtown project was somewhat halted while they were looking for a location for leaching fields and property. So there is constant evolving information. So maybe we could set something up so when he does have these monthly meetings, he does a quick update to the community, which
Perfect.
This way everybody knows where we are with it all. I'm happy to reach out to him about doing something like that. It's almost as simple enough as him recording his regular meetings and putting it out there to the public.
Good stuff. Definitely. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, so next I have Marie Gruick. I'm gonna ask her to unmute.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I have a couple of questions and then one statement. The preserve on Smithtown Boulevard, with the traffic, my biggest concern is making a left-hand turn coming out of that development, because I tried crossing the street when we did the groundbreaking, and I almost lost my life because nobody stops there. So I want to know how you're gonna, you know, take care of the traffic on Smithtown Boulevard, which is horrendous as it is, but whatever. But to make a left-hand turn coming out of that preserve is going to be horrific. You know, you have the light on the corner and you have everybody making that turn onto Smithtown Boulevard. And then you're trying to get out of the preserve, making a left. How are you going to justify that?
I'm not a traffic engineer. I mean, but it is a county road.
Right.
Suffolk County DPW is the one that dictates what level of improvement gets installed there for the anticipated level of traffic coming out of there. They're not currently calling for a traffic signal at that location. They are, you know, requiring some sort of upgrades to the right of way. But I really can't answer that. They were required to obtain approval from Suffolk County DPW, and
Is there another entrance coming out onto Gibbs Pond? I heard there would
No.
be an
no,
entrance.
no,
Okay.
absolutely not. It's
Okay.
one entrance, basically out opposite Chestnut Street, with
Okay.
an emergency exit that also comes out to Smithtown Boulevard. We
Okay.
did not want emergency access to any of the neighboring residential streets.
Okay, now going to sewers, you know, because maybe I'm a little confused. I was told if we put this preserve in, that we would become a downtown and then sewers would then follow for the stores. I mean, this was like a big push for us, constantly being told, you know, put the preserve in, it makes you a downtown, Nesconset becomes a downtown, the stores get sewers. I mean, now you're saying there are no sewer planned for.
There's a sewer treatment plan proposed for that project. And to my understanding, it's only has enough capacity for that project itself. Sometimes they're designed with expansion. I haven't seen the health department approved treatment plant. Not saying it's not feasible, because there are projects like, let's say, the Nob Hill community, which is in the town of Islip, and they have their own sewer treatment plant. Sometimes there is excess capacity where other businesses or other developments are permitted to tie into them. The condo development at the corner of Roseville and Smithtown Boulevard, I believe that's piped into Nob Hill. So like I said, I'm not going to say it's not possible, but right now it's not proposed.
Yes,
know,
we're
but
piped
see-
in. We are piped in.
But see, this is where the confusion comes, because, you know, you're told something by several officials from the town, and then now we have this meeting and it's a whole new ballgame, you know.
Well, no, Maria, it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's an impossibility, but it's being
Okay.
developed as a private plant right now. You know, it's usually only once it's taken over by the county that you're really able to do those sort of things. The Nob Hill treatment plant is now a county plant. Over where the Ticanio project was, that used to be a private plant where the Windcrest condos are by the highway department.
Right.
That was
yeah.
only turned over to the county about 2 years ago. And once that happened, that's when Green Turtle and some of the other restaurants over there, Carrabba's,
Right.
they were forced to connect in, but they weren't allowed to do that until that transfer happened.
Okay.
Maria, I
Now
can
my-
also clarify a little bit for you too. So having the residential component on Smithtown Boulevard. So there's a component that would essentially give Nesconset the ability to be considered to have its own centralized business district when you have a residential component, which does open up the doorway for a town to, you know, to look at plans for sewering a downtown. I think the point that Pete and everybody was, and Allison and Dave and all of us were making was just with regards to sewers here is that, you know, regarding the plan, it looks like the main focus is on completing these main sewer projects in the confirmed downtown business areas. I could tell you that like with regards to St. James, with locating an actual wastewater treatment facility, we've looked at various options from possible, and I believe we actually were, I want to say it was maybe a year ago, trying to figure out how much it would actually cost to build a treatment facility. And I believe it was somewhere around $157 million, if I'm not mistaken. So, and there's also locations like Smith Haven Mall, who's, I don't know what's going to happen with their,
Right.
if the mall is going to continue as a mall, or if they're going to see, I think everything changes with this pandemic, I guess is
Right.
the main point. So, so the town, will still, make sure the town's still focused on, getting, if there's an opportunity to get funding or a grant to create a sewer that would help Nesconset, or if it's an opportunity to hook into a restored sewer treatment facility, like we said with the mall. We don't know what's going to come of that. So it's not like it's not happening.
Right.
There is a process but it's a very long process. If you look at Kings Park, for example, Kings Park has everything. It's literally everything we need to hook up, and it's still, 2024. I mean, we started this
Right.
process in 2017. So it's
Okay.
creating an actual sewer line in a sewer district takes 10, 15 years, maybe even more. So it's not something that's out of the cards. It's just for the sake of the master plan. The main focus is completing these sewer lines in these business districts that are in existence right now. And nobody's scrapping any idea or trying to, say, no, Nesconset's,
No, I'm not saying that. I was just, I just don't want to be a forgotten, we're always the forgotten hamlet. We're always the last one. Oh, we forgot Nesconset because we're the little, at the end. Now, going on, Peter, I know, Peter and Dave, you live in Nesconset.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna say, I'm
I'm-
not forgetting Wisconsin.
I know.
I kind of prioritize it.
I know. The Commonsinger property, I'm on the board. I've been fighting 10 years to get that property to come around as a museum. I mean, I'm at my wit's end. I know the county owns it. We've been maintaining it. We've been doing fundraising. We fixed that house. I finally got electricity but it's not hooked to the house. They won't go in and hook it. I mean, we have the funds and everything. The county just doesn't want us to open it up as a museum. I don't know why, but you could hook that property with the Bavarian property, which I've been fighting for 10 years for. Let's do something with that property. That's the last green space that we really have in Nesconset. So, if we could do something with that, I'd be really happy. And I'd shut up and Nicole would say, okay, yay. Go away.
Marie, I'm in agreement. I walk that property all the time, and
I
again,
hate to they just broke that window, that famous window that was in the World Fair. The guy that developed that window, they just broke it. They destroyed the window. I mean, it was a historic window. So,
Mhm.
We just bought it back up, that house again. We want electricity so we could put an alarm in. So if somebody can do work on that Commonsinger property, I mean, I think it would generate some cash to the town.
Okay.
That's all I have to say. Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
You too.
Happy New Year. Okay, so I have Bob Soto. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Cooley and Marie got my questions, but I have two things. It's incredible and it's really refreshing to see our town people have such a thorough knowledge in Nesconset, especially Dave and Pete. That's very good. Thank you. Allison, does the master plan tell us that from Terry Road along 347 to Southern Boulevard, that you can't build more than 2.5 stories?
That's right.
So the rumors about a 4-story hotel are not true then?
Well,
There's
it's not a rumor.
Oh.
There's an application pending. Right now, the height restriction for that area is two and a half stories or 35 feet. The recommended new zoning keeps that same height restriction of 35 feet or 2.5 stories. There is an application that's pending before the town board and the Board of Zoning Appeals for
And
a
that's
4
one of the
story. So,
reasons we POSDEC'd it and are requiring an environmental impact statement, is because the tall building would have potential views into the neighborhood.
But our master plan does recommend 2.5 stories.
it
It does.
maintains keeping the existing height limitations of 2.5 stories.
No, so what I'm getting to is that experts that studied all of this recommend 2.5 stories. So when we go to do battle with these people because they want 4 stories, we're going to have a recognized H2M is going to say, we recommend 2.5 stories and no more.
That's what it's recommending right now, correct?
Okay, so
Hence, that's why they're applying for a variance for the height.
so the applicant should have a harder time getting 4 stories because all of us are recommending, all of the town leaders are recommending 2.5 stories.
That is correct. I mean, and that's a hardship. I mean, sometimes there's extenuating circumstances if you're in a downtown, you know, there's an undue hardship, but yes, we feel, you know, that 2.5 stories is the proper height for that section of 347.
Okay, so again, I thank you for having a total thorough knowledge of Nesconset, including where I live, the woods at Smithtown, the HOA there. We are hooked into Nob Hill in the
Right.
town of Islip, 56 homes. And we never, ever, 30 years, we've never had a problem. The county took it over. We pay $600 a year for sewer fees. It's a home run. If that mall could be opened up to us and Country Point on Middle Country Road, which I understand has lots of excess capacity. The mall has lots of excess capacity. If the county ever took them over, we could probably sewer a good part of Nesconset. So thank you very much. I appreciate everything.
Take
If
care,
you
Rob.
remind me, just asking a quick question, because you know, I'm not a planner, I'm not an expert, but I do understand now. I've been forced to kind of learn quite a bit about environmental impact studies and POSDECs. Do you mind just kind of touching on? I mean, I know I joke around and I call it like a kiss of death, but a positive declaration is a very in-depth, very expensive study that involves quite a bit. Do you mind just letting the folks that are with us kind of give a quick description of all that? You don't have to touch on all that's involved, but it really is a very costly, very time sensitive process. It's not just some piece of paper that we issue. You know, there's really much involved, correct?
Correct, Nicole. So, right. So a positive declaration indicates that the initial review of the application is there's a potential for significant environmental impacts. So those impacts could fall in a bunch of different categories. Now, they could be traffic, they could be air quality, they could be water quality, they could be community character. So they could fall in a whole range. You know, they could be archaeological. There's a lot of different topics that could be studied. So, like I said before, the scope identifies what topics to study. Then they get studied in detail, right? Create the draft document. Then that has a public, you know, participation part with public comments, a public hearing, oftentimes. And then all those comments have to be answered. But yeah, it can be very costly. It's a lot of work, a lot of scientific analysis that goes into it. And then it comes out with what's called the findings. Those are the recommendations of, you know, is there a way to do this slightly differently and reduce the environmental impacts, or can you modify it so that there's less impacts by making it smaller, or maybe making it, you know, narrower but taller, or moving it on the site, or changing traffic or patterns or something like that. Is there ways that it could be mitigated. So those are the findings at the end, the conclusions at the end. And then ultimately, the town board or the planning board has to make a decision of, yes, that, this is a workable solution, all these impacts, and kind of balance the impacts, because there's always going to be some kind of impact, but are they balanced and appropriate? And then, the board has to make the decision whether to approve or deny at the end of the process.
Thank you, David. Okay, I don't have anybody else's hand up, but if you're having trouble and you have a question and you want to use the chat button, or you want to, anybody else has any other questions that they'd like to get on the record, go ahead. I'll give you oh, I got some. Wait, I guess. Who is that? Bob, do you have another question?
No, I lowered my hand.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Did somebody say something? Okay. Okay, so again, just in case anybody's looking for the raise hand button, it is the little smiley face at the bottom to the right. It says reactions on it. If you push that button and then hit raise your hand, I'll see it and I'll call you. And if something comes up later on tonight, or again, we're gonna have this on YouTube, might take 24 hours to upload, but we are going to put it out on YouTube and it will be on our town's website. So if you do have questions or you want to send the video out to collect public questions, you can do that. And then you can email planning@smithtownny.gov and we'll get all of those questions answered before proceeding with any public hearing.
Also, if anybody's shy and you'd just rather call us by telephone, you can call the planning department and
Or the environmental department.
Yeah, we're happy to talk to you.
I have Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
I will say one thing for everybody that's on this meeting. It's awesome that the town does this. I just wish I would see more people that are on these meetings, because it's always like after the town and, I don't know, 2 years, whatever this gets done, wrapped up 2 years from now. I hate when people say, we didn't know about it or we didn't see it, So I applaud everybody here individually that took the time with the town, because it's everybody like you guys that are, making it happen to give that feedback back to everybody here from the town. So I just wanted to applaud everybody for being here. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so I believe we have 3 more meetings coming up. Again, if anybody missed out or you're talking to anybody and they want to know how to participate or watch, you could go to the town's website, smithtownny.gov. If you click on there's actually a button right on the homepage under the Citizen Help Center that says Comprehensive Master Plan, and that'll take you to the master plan page. All of the content, the master plan itself, the environmental impact statement documents, all of that is online, including recordings from the COMAC and HOPOG meetings. And then tonight's meeting should be up, I would say, hopefully within 24 hours. But anybody who wishes to watch or contribute or get information about the following next 3 meetings are more than happy to call us or email us, and we'll give you all that information. I'll give it 1 more second. Anybody going once, going twice? Okay.
Anybody's interested, Kings Park is Thursday night. St. James is next Thursday night, the 28th. And then Smithtown will be the last one on February 4th.
Great, thank you.
We were trying to encourage this because, this way we can individually gear the conversation to the home communities. I wanted to talk to everybody in Nesconset tonight. Otherwise, you might be monopolized with conversations about downtown St. James or or Kings Park. And this way, each hamlet, we can talk individually about the zoning that, ultimately affects them. I hope everybody found this helpful.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks, Nicole, and thanks to our town officials. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Thank
thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Patty Stoddard and Phyllis Hart said thank you very much for the presentation. So thank you for the very nice shout out. And with that, I will close the meeting. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks. Have
Good
a good
night.
night.
Good night.